Sure. My name is Bob Figular. I am the president and owner of a company called Mariners Learning System. We're approved by the Coast Guard to teach people to get their captain's license.
Perfect. Can you tell me a little bit more about the business?
Sure. So we teach in an online format. We started back in 2002. In 2005, we're the first school to be approved by the Coast Guard to teach in an online format. Since that time, we've had over 65,000 graduates. And right now we have over 10,000 students who are actively engaged in our programs as we speak.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Can you tell me a little bit about directly what you do during the day?
So I'm the orchestra leader. So as time goes on, in the earlier days, I did everything. I taught, I took care of the administrative piece of it, I did the testing piece to it, and now through the growth in the years, now I kind of sit back. I work with companies like Miles and some of the other companies to make sure that we're looking at the future. So I deal more with the future, not with the daily routine of what's going on. Then I have a team who basically deals with what goes on a daily basis within our company.
Gotcha. And I'm just curious. How does it work with teaching people this online?
So with regards to teaching online, we're taking care of the knowledge piece to it. The one thing I can't ever give somebody is experience, but I can give them the theory and teach them the stuff that they need to know to be safe out on the water. In 2005 is when we first started writing the course to be online. At that time, we were coming out of an economic downturn. I saw a lot of issues. For me, teaching in a classroom, there were a lot of restrictions teaching remotely. At one time, we were the largest school in the country offering courses all throughout the United States. Someplace around 2005, the Coast Guard made some adjustments in their expectations and approval requirements of a school, and one of which basically required every word from the instructors now to be scripted. So literally, we had guys and gals sitting in classrooms listening to instructors reading from a book. I've written 15 or 16 books. If I were to teach you in a classroom environment, I would actually be reading from the same books that I wrote. Now, I promise you, there's lots of smart stuff in the book, but there might be a few more things that I might want to share with a student. But with the current state of teaching with the Coast Guard's approval, you were really limited to what you could and how far you could deviate from the lesson plan or the course guidelines. So with that said, I had a lot of students who were taking our courses who were having a difficult time keeping up with the course content. So I had this original idea. How about if I put audio and video in your home and you still come in and see the classes? That way you could go home, absorb the information, refresh yourself, review it as many times as you want. Now this was in 2005, and you have to remember at that time there weren't any learning management systems or things like that, so it cost me $175,000 and 18 months to write my first program. Now I'm a nice guy, but I'm nowhere near that nice of a guy. I submitted the paperwork to the Coast Guard and asked them for approval teaching in an online format. At the time, the Coast Guard said that they would never consider teaching in an online format. I got on the internet, did a little bit of research, and in the late 80s, there was a directive to the Coast Guard that was still active to find new and unique ways of teaching boaters education. Now, they weren't thinking online, nor were they thinking captain's licenses, but that was my in. And once we used that in, I submitted the paperwork to the Coast Guard. 7 months later, the commandant of the Coast Guard called me up and said, guess what? We're going to give you the approval. 3 years later, we started working with the Coast Guard directly, and we've trained hundreds of active duty Coast Guards men and women throughout the country.
That's incredible. That's really cool. That's some expert detective work on your part.
Well, a lot of times when people say no, that just means you got to look a little bit harder.
Yeah, very true, very true. So I guess on that note, how's this impacted your business recently?
Well, besides the obvious disruption, although we are an online school, one of the requirements for our approval with the Coast Guard is that we do need to test in a live proctored environment.
Right.
So we have over 400 proctored sites and locations a year. We have over 100 people who administer those tests on our behalf. When the federal guidelines first came out, we started following the federal guidelines, and then states like New York, New Jersey, California, Illinois, they started shutting down all businesses within those areas that we were operating. So we saw, first we were jumping through hoops to meet the federal guidelines, and
Right.
then the state governors started coming in, and they started changing the rules as well. So it's been a real trick for us. We only have 3 or 4 states within the United States that we do not test in.
Oh, okay.
So trying to keep up on the changes, not only the federal changes in the guidelines, but also the
Right.
local and the state, that has really been a trick and a half. That was
Yeah.
the most obvious one. We've also seen our call volume go up 400 to 600%.
Oh,
People are
wow.
looking for answers.
Yeah.
People don't know what they're supposed to do with our programs, and to stay in the guidelines of the Coast Guard. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end to the course. So you have
Mhm.
to finish the course within 12 calendar months. We've got students who are scheduled to take exams who now we don't have a testing center for them.
Right.
So that got a little bit tricky. As a proactive action, we automatically extended everybody's courses 90 days
Right.
for no additional fees or things like that, just as a momentary pause until we get our feet underneath until we're given direction by the Coast Guard and the other powers to be of how to continue moving forward. So that was a little bit difficult. And then the other thing that we see is everybody who's calling is looking for a deal. Whether they are or not financially impacted by this, everybody wants a deal. One of the biggest promotions that we put in place is called our American Hero Fund. So
Right.
we're offering 50% discount for any of our students who are first responder, military person, medical
Right.
related, doctors, nurses, things like that. We've
Right.
had that program in place for years now, but it's really being taken advantage of right now by those first responders for sure.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Hmm.
All right. So I know you said it's important to you that you're still pushing forward. I just want to know a little bit about what your goals are for the future.
Well, to be here when the dust settles is my number
Yeah.
one goal. Um, One thing I know for sure in down times is good companies get better and bad ones go away.
Right.
And it's really caused us to look internally.
Mhm.
Fortunately, unfortunately, I don't know how it works out, but right before this, I was going forward with a major initiative with Miles
Mhm.
to address some business opportunities that I had seen that we were going to spend the next year to start working through. Some of that
Right.
has been accelerated. For instance, one of the conversations I had with the Miles team was that we wanted to be able to offer our captain's licensing students online proctored exams.
Right.
Now, this was really planned for the fourth quarter of this year. This was all before the virus and everything happened.
Mhm.
It was more of a, let's look at what we're going to do over the next 12 months, not let's look at this thing today.
Yeah.
Once the virus started really having its impact, I realized quickly that this had to now be moved up quickly. So I reached out to JP and the other people on who helped through me work through these things. We accelerated the program in 10 days. In fact, this afternoon I expect to be pushing it live. Made a investment on spec. So the Coast Guard has always frowned on the thought of online testing. To date, I
Right.
don't know whether they're going to like it any more than they did yesterday.
Right.
I'm having a difficult time getting them to engage with me and have this conversation, but I'm sure that they've got a lot of other things on their plate as well.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
Miles team was able to take an idea and in less than 10 days, flush it out. And I expect it to go live button tomorrow after I review everything this
Oh, wow.
afternoon. So that was a good example where we had to change some of our
Yeah.
business ideas to match what the current environment is.
Yeah.
So that was a one piece to it. We're really looking at the website. We're really expanding upon the capabilities of the website.
Mhm.
A couple years ago, we had an initiative, mobile first, and moving everything over to the web in a cloud-based solution. We were 90% of the way there. The only thing that we didn't have on the web for various reasons was my accounting system. And we've now started moving forward with getting that moved over as well. So those are a couple of the pieces that we did. We're also developing an app. So one of the things that people on the East and the West Coast don't realize is, in a lot of the central states, internet access is limited and spotty at very best. I just
Yeah.
spent some time in Colorado, and my GPS didn't work. My cell phone didn't work. I couldn't get
Yeah.
internet connections. These were big problems. So working with the Miles team, we're also putting together an app for our students that will allow them to have access to their courses even when they do not have access to the internet. And
Oh,
the
wow.
basic way that thing will work is once you logged into the course, it will, you have access to it. Let's say that you're on an airplane traveling, you're 35,000 feet, you have no access to high-speed internet. You can go in, you can read, you can do a quiz. When you get back down and you are within a connection, a Wi-Fi connection, everything will sync back up for you. So
Uh,
that's another area that we're also moving forward on. I would say, if anything, the plans that we had in place prior to this have just been accelerated. They were
right.
based on good business, sound business practices.
Right.
And although today is really scary because none of us know what's going to come next, I've always found that making decisions when I'm afraid or fearful of something, the results are almost never what I want them to be.
Right.
And that's why we're going to continue moving forward.
Right. So, now I don't know how you've, felt with all this going on, but have you had any fears, and how have you been able to kind of mitigate that, make sure you are making sound business decisions?
Yeah, I've been a small business owner for over 32 years now.
Yeah.
I've been through, I was a dot-com guy.
Mhm.
I was one of those guys that got caught on the bubble. I was taking a company public in 1999. My first company that I had built on a $5,000 credit card, rang the bell, did all the stuff up in Wall Street. And just as this stuff was going on, the dot-com bubble burst, and I was in it.
Yeah.
I was around in 2002 for some of the downturns, and as a result from that, that's when we started this business. Then we had the 9/11 attacks, the recession, 2007, 2008. We had
Right.
gone online in 2005, so another good move on our part, and then
Yeah.
currently. So for me, what helps me the most is I don't stand idly very well, and I don't go backwards very well.
Right.
So there's a mantra that I try to live by. It's pretty simple words, but sometimes it can be tricky to live by. And it goes, if it's to be, it's up to me. And what that means in my world is, if I see
Mm.
something I disagree with, either correct it or accept it. No bitching, whining, or moaning.
Gotcha.
So
Yep.
in this particular case, there's a lot of things that I cannot control. I've never, in 32 years as a business owner, I've never once had a state shut down businesses and
Yeah.
the government and everybody else. I've never had that. So I can't control that. But what I can control is what I try to focus on. So I try not to stand like a deer looking in the headlights. For me,
Mhm.
having some sort of forward motion allows me to work my way through some of the concerns and the realities of today's world.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Let's see. So, let's see. What how are you kind of turning this into opportunities?
So going based on what I said before, good companies get better and bad ones go
Yeah.
away. We're getting better at what we do.
Right.
Um, I think one of the biggest things that I'm the proudest of is the results of being proactive instead of reactive.
Yeah.
So our customer service department and our employees have really taken it upon themselves to notify clients of changes, give them updates when we can, being very, very proactive. And the responses have been really great. So the proactive piece to it has worked out really well for us. We've also found from a business perspective that there are a lot of companies that are going in reverse. They're retreating. They believe that they need to save their money for whatever might happen in the future, and that may be true. But what I have found is when there is an economic downturn or a concern within the industry, that's when I actually want to increase my ad buys. So in today's world, we do an awful lot of advertising in social media. We also are in Google, paid ads, things like that. Prior to this issue, we were paying anywhere between $1.25 and $1.75 for somebody to click on one of our ads in Google. Those same costs now today, because there's less competition for those keywords, now it's cost me 75 cents for a keyword. So I'm getting more value for the dollars that I'm spending.
Right.
And there's a little bit less clutter out there because many of our competitors have retreated.
Wow. Okay. So it's really good. You guys are pushing forward right now.
Yeah. Well, and also on the social side of it, we've been promoting a lot of our blogs. When we advertise, I always like to advertise with the idea of people doing. So since we're into boating and things like that, and a lot of the coast, a lot of stuff has been closed down, getting our stories out there, getting our customer stories out there, sharing educational knowledge for no fees. Those are all things that are really being well received out there, and those are some of the areas in which we're trying to promote our services.
Yeah, no, that's great. Now, do you have any advice that you would give other business owners during this time?
So my advice is based on experience. And the one thing that concerns me is I don't want to come across like I have the answers, because I don't. I don't think anybody knows the answers, but one thing for sure, as I said before, experience has proven to me that being proactive and not reactive is really one of the most important pieces to this. Lead from the front of the pack, not from behind. Your customers and your students will appreciate that. Don't abandon sound business practices. If something made a lot of sense last month, it probably still makes a lot of sense today. It's just a little scarier allotting the dollars and the budget necessary. I don't think you should be reckless, but I don't think you should throw away those contingency plans that you may have had in the past. That's something else that we try to do. Is although I can't look into the future, I always try to have contingency plans. What would I do if? That way, if a event such as this comes along, I've already got a plan in place when I was thinking clearly, and I wasn't afraid of what my next action might cause. So I think that is important. I really try to avoid those knee-jerk reactions. Try to isolate myself. You know, if you watch the news every single day, and I happen to be a news junkie, it's really, really scary out there. So I've limited the viewing of my news sources and resources so that I can just concentrate on what's going on around me. Things that are going around me in the world, I can't control. So those are the things that keep me awake at night. The things that I can't control, that's where I'll lose some sleep. So I'm really trying just to focus on the areas in which I can make a difference.
Right.
Also, I'm not the guy who would normally recommend this, but I also think that business leaders need to look at the stimulus packages that are out there from the government. We've just gone through an exercise with the Paycheck Protection Program, PPP. It just opened up on Friday. This will allow a business owner to have a forgivable loan for up to 2.5 times their monthly cost as it's associated with payroll and things like that. So, and if you go and process this in a period of time, the loan may be forgivable as well. So there are a lot of programs out there. I'm not a paperwork guy. And all these programs revolve around forms and applications and paperwork and things like that. But I really do believe that it's an area where, as a business leader, you owe it to your customers and you owe it to your employees to to look out and see what some of these stimulus packages may be able to do for you.
Right. Okay. Very good. Very good. So you and your team have had to adapt quite a bit, I guess.
And that's what business is. I've always
Yep.
seen business as a monopoly board,
Yeah.
and the pieces are always moving. Some people have a bigger stack of money today than tomorrow and the next day, and that's always
Yeah.
changing. But if you have the ability of sitting back and watching those changing pieces and then cover the
Right.
moves of your competitors, seek out opportunities where opportunities may not have previously existed,
Right.
and make sure that you keep an overall view of what's going on and not just focused on one issue, you can be a winner as well.
Love it. That was great. That was fantastic.
Good.
Yeah, no, I think that'll be great. That should be really helpful to a lot of people. I think they'll be happy to hear that.
Well, I'll let you know how smart I am in 6 months from now.
We'll see. I'm hoping for you.
You know what? Yeah. It's a little bit of luck. It's a little bit of skill, and you know, it amazes me. For the first 14 days that they had in New Jersey the quarantine on, where you couldn't go out, I basically stayed home, and I had
Yeah.
a doctor's appointment, and I went out, and it amazed me at how many businesses were still considered to be important businesses to be open, but then all the other ones that were not. And it really scares me, because today I'm on the right side of the street. Today my company's been impacted, but we haven't been shut down. There's companies and there's people who a month ago literally thought that they had a thriving business, and now they're looking for the next dollar to come in. And in the state of New Jersey, they put really tremendous pressure on small business owners with some new rules and regulations that they put in, as far as Family Leave Act and some other things like that. Really tough as a small business when you don't have money coming in, that the state is now telling you that you've got to start putting more money out for your people. Really tricky times for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I guess, like you said, you're just kind of focusing on what you can control and not worrying so much about what you can't.
That's how we do it. And also looking at my partners. Some of our partners did really well during this, and others didn't do as well as they should have. So it's put us in a position where, and actually some of those partners that we didn't think were doing well at the time, they really weren't. And now when you need to reach out to them and count on them, they failed. So it shows the importance. In fact, I got a quick, great story that I know you've never heard. It's how I came to Miles. So 10, maybe 12 years ago, we were a really small company. I had programmers, I had all sorts of different types of people, but none of them worked for me. They were all independent contractors, and they were all spread apart. And my job was the orchestra, making sure that everybody was doing what they were supposed to be, when they were supposed to be doing, and they were where they were supposed to be, when they were supposed to be there. One morning I came into my office, and there was an image of a group of terrorists on my computer. This is 2002, 2003. Terrorists with machine guns, with writing that I didn't recognize, and my computer systems were locked out and locked down, couldn't get in.
Oh my goodness.
And this was really, I was shut down.
Yeah.
And I didn't have the sources that I had were able to do what I needed them to do, but they really weren't prepared to deal with terrorism. And remember, post 9/11 and all this other stuff was going on at this time. Really scary. And the last thing I wanted was all of our customers to log into my website and see a picture of a bunch of terrorists. So I did a lot of research really quickly, and that's where I came up with Miles. And it took Miles 3 days, and that's where I was introduced to JP, one of the smartest guys that ever sits in a room. And within 3 days, they were able to get the terrorist off our website. And what they actually had was a bug that would infect a page. And as soon as you tried to troubleshoot and look into the code and go back to that page, it would go to another page and basically disappear off the page that you're on. And it took the Miles team 3 days to track it down. Probably took us 3 or 4 months to get all of the damage that it did out of my website. But that was my
Yeah.
introduction to Miles. And since that time, our relationship's only grown. So that's
Yeah.
how I originally got into the Miles team to begin with.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's a great story.
yeah, it's true too.
All right. Well, it was very nice talking to you. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
All
Thank
right,
you.
be
All
safe. Take care. Bye
right.
bye.
Bye.